Good morning, folks. South Africa, like many countries, members of parliament enjoy benefits which South Africans, as citizens, do not possess. In other words, in some respects, they are protected and above the law. This is not unusual. It's a norm internationally for many countries. Under Section 58 of the South African Constitution, members of parliament enjoy absolute privileges and immunities. They cannot face civil or criminal liability, arrest, or imprisonment for anything that they say, produce, or submit inside the parliament. This absolute protection means a member of parliament cannot be criminally prosecuted or sued for defamation for throwing insults during a session. Now, this matters, particularly in the latest example of convicted criminal Julius Malema sitting in parliament, slandering others at will with no substantive consequences. Now, over the years, the abusive black supremacy rhetoric that Juju has spewed has included exhorting others to violence with kill the Boer, implying that he plans to kill all whites, only not just yet. And as a recent civil case proved, encouraging others to harm innocent civilians. The convicted criminal, Julius Malema, was recently finally convicted of a serious offense. Yet the more serious offense is that he remains in parliament, a clear danger to the public, sitting in an exalted position of influence and power. His latest conduct is representative of his moral character, which fails. He's unsuited for elected or appointed office. African National Congress Member of Parliament Cameron Dugmore, a white South African, commented in Parliament that Malema had incorrectly addressed the Speaker, Kumbutsu Ntshavheni, by her first name. Dugmore argued that this was unparliamentary, a minor but important point to consider. In response, Malema launched into racial insults that, as a private citizen, could have landed him in hot water, but as a member of parliament, he is protected regardless of his gutter mouth. Malema said, "I have got no respect for white supremacists. You must know that. I've got no respect for people who think they're superior to others. You can do that with your tokens in your party, but you won't do that with me." Speaking of people who think they're superior to others, Juju needs to look in the mirror. This guy's a racist. You're not realizing it. He's a bloody racist, this guy. He thinks he's superior. You can look at his skin burned from the sun, racist of note. You can't subject me to this clown. These are the comments that Malema uttered in parliament against a white South African. Imagine the media uproar had Dugmore said such things about Malema, which of course he didn't. So what was Malema's sanction for this repulsive conduct? He subsequently withdrew his race-baiting comments and is also asked to withdraw other utterances that he made towards Dugmore, but he refused to do so. Malema, either dishonest or dim-witted, claimed that Dugmore had referred to him as a boy. What Cameron Dugmore actually stated was that he did not have to defend himself and his liberation credentials to Julius Malema, who has no liberation credentials. Dugmore, of course, betrayed the old South Africa to tie his fate to the ANC during the apartheid era. He was recruited into the ANC underground in 1986 and joined the party officially in 1991. So what exactly did Dugmore say? I'll quote Dugmore. "What if his father was killing people when he was a boy? What if I make that allegation that his father was killing people when he was a boy?" When directed to withdraw his slimy insults, Malema stated, "I withdraw racist, but I maintain that he's a white supremacist, and there's nothing unparliamentary about that." Actually, contrary to the convicted criminal who sits on the Judicial Services Commission's understanding of parliamentary procedure, it is in fact inappropriate. And it can result in internal sanctions, the order to withdraw, which was given, an eviction from the chambers, which should have happened, and contempt procedures, which ought to happen. If the behavior is egregious or part of a pattern, the matter is referred to the Powers and Privileges Committee, as this should have been done, but was not to my knowledge. It is egregious, and it is a pattern of slimy, repulsive, unparliamentary conduct on the part of Julius Malema. We just saw Fidel Adams of the National Colored Congress and an MP from the Mkhonto we Sizwe party punished for their conduct in parliament. Why does Malema continue to skate free? I'll explain to you why. You see, Cameron Dugmore is a white South African, and black South Africans are given free rein to insult, belittle, and harm white South Africans, in parliament, certainly, and oftentimes in civil society. We've seen what others have done, and the sanctions have not received. Has anyone ever heard whatever happened to Nobbs and Kesey and her racially insultive comments against colored flight attendants on the FlySAF air flight from Durban to Cape Town? Has she even been banned from flying in South Africa? What about Nota Baloy's shameful conduct, saying that white women were unable to reproduce and that whites are Neanderthals? Well, technically speaking, most people with European ancestry do have some Neanderthal DNA, one of the most successful hominid species in the history of hominids. So nothing to be ashamed there, but it was meant as a racial insult. He said whites should be driven into the seas, essentially, and they should all be killed. Those are basically what his comments were. But what was Nota Baloy's sanction of that as a private citizen? No criminal conduct, but Vicky Momberg went to prison when she was nearly carjacked and assaulted and was in a state of shock and was racially insulting and insensitive to Black police officer. Had a financial judgment against her and sent to prison as a convicted felon. Yet Nota Baloy said things far more egregious and more dangerous, and all he had to do was read a half-hearted, comical apology, which he had no sentiment for on air. For those of you that believe that things are hunky-dory in South Africa, you're very much mistaken. It is not a rainbow Ganassi, a rainbow nation. It is a nation where Black supremacists reign and lord over others, including racial minorities. And for you white South Africans here in the mother city of Cape Town, who live in this absolute bubble, and I heard at least twice yesterday, South Africans refer to South Africans who went to America saying they weren't refugees, they're not legitimate refugees. You don't know of what you speak. And once you become a victim of this abusive conduct, or you cannot get a job because you're white and you're told that to your face, the most qualified candidate, but denied, until that happens to you, you'll continue to live in your bubble. There's no reason for this. There was hope and promise. And South Africa was given an inheritance that should have made this the Colossus of Africa and a major competitor on the world stage. Instead, South Africa has a shrinking economy, an exploding population, rapidly growing unemployment, and pervasive poverty as a consequence of wrong-minded socialist and Black supremacist policies that have undermined the safety, security, health, and welfare of all South Africans. And the biggest losers in all this are Black South Africans. 3 times as many live in abject poverty today as did under the National Party. There's no way to explain that away. You can't blame Jan van Riebeck. You can't blame Hendrik Verwoerd and apartheid. You can't blame Donald Trump. These are the actions of people sitting in Parliament just a kilometer and a half from where I'm sitting right now. And they have no shame. They're blue light escorts, they're 2 million rand salaries, their obnoxious conduct, and they're to blame. Quibbling over minor things, while the real issues at hand need to be addressed. You see, you can be a Black man and be racially insulting and threaten others in South Africa, and rarely do you face the consequences. Anyone who behaves in that fashion should face the consequences, whether you're a politician or not. What say you, South Africa, Mzansi? Reporting from Mother City of Cape Town, this is Chris. God bless.